welcome back to my channel. My name's Laura Bruno and I am an intuitive astrologer. Today I thought I'd just give a kind of a casual video talking about how I got into studying astrology. Sometimes people wonder that. So this story actually goes back pretty far. When I was just a child, I was extremely intuitive. I used to have all kinds of psychic dreams, and to the point where I didn't know that that wasn't how other people went through life until I started telling people the psychic dreams, and then I was kind of that weird kid. So oddly, I trusted my dreams and I trusted intuition, but I thought astrology was just totally out there and a bunch of BS, to the point where I really wanted to go to college at the furthest away college that I could find. And my parents wanted me to apply to a state school. And so my way of sabotaging the application to the state school was to write my application essay talking about what a Gemini I am. For whatever reason, I just thought that that would automatically make them take my application and just put that in the trash. They didn't do that. I ended up getting in, but I was still able to go to a school further away like I wanted to. But that was kind of my early intro to astrology, was that it was those horoscopes that you read in the paper, and that while my dreams, which often came true, and that's kind of weird in itself, it wasn't as weird as astrology. So that continued to be my attitude for many, many, many years. I was on an academic track. I was going to get my PhD in English literature and ended up having a brain injury a few months before I was supposed to start the PhD program. And that injury made it that I could no longer read or write or tolerate fluorescent lights or remember anything. And so basically my PhD career as an English professor went, the way of the dodo bird. So I ended up starting to do psychic reading, intuitive reading. I became a Reiki master teacher, not because I wanted to do those things, but just because after 4 years of almost total disability, it became clear that I could do all these things, but I couldn't do anything else to support myself. So I thought, well, all right, I guess the universe is pushing me in this direction. I can help a lot of people. And so I started doing medical intuitive work, and that eventually expanded into doing intuitive coaching. Along this same time period, I had an idea for a novel, and this goes back to 2001. I still couldn't read or write, but I just kind of jotted it down in a notebook. Couldn't even look at the notes for years later, but I had an idea for a character named Shazandra, and that she was from a family of women healers who were all named after herbs. And so I just kind of tucked that away, and eventually when I had recovered fully from my brain injury and I could now read and write and do intuitive readings, I kind of came back to that idea of the novel and decided to set it in Sedona and really explore a lot of the different qualities that you run into as someone who lives in Sedona. I've lived there twice, and I just kind of wanted to give kind of a little intro to all the different healing modalities that someone might turn to if they were in a crisis. So as part of my research for my book, which eventually became Shazandra and the Gates of Mu, you can find this on Amazon and I'll link it below. But as part of my research for that, I wanted to find out what would the astrology be for my main character. And at the time, I didn't really know anything about astrology. I wasn't even sure if this was going to be a little bit spoofy in the novel, but I had a good friend, Timothy Glenn, who he ended up doing the astrology reading for me. So I kind of pulled the character's birthday and time, I guess I just intuited it. I knew what kind of character I wanted her to be, and but I had no idea of the astrology. And when I gave Tim the date and her time of birth, everything from my plot came out in the astrology reading. It was like this totally uncanny thing to me at the time, that I could give him the birthday of my character that he knew nothing about, and he could just read her and tell me everything about my character. So that kind of was like a little bit of a light bulb moment, like, hey, this astrology stuff is kind of interesting. It's a little more accurate than I thought it was. And so that got me interested in astrology. I did complete the book finally in 2009. It has a 2012 theme, but also very applicable to today, oddly. It was a little bit ahead of its time, I think. So anyway, in the interim, I decided that I needed to learn more about astrology, because I thought, well, this stuff is kind of accurate and it's a little uncanny. And so I got a book called The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need. And this is by Joanna Martine Woolfolk. And for many, many years, like maybe 7 or 8 years, that was the only astrology book that I ever had. It's actually pretty comprehensive, and I found it to be an excellent resource. Then as my studies continued and I was doing research on the internet, I started getting into North Nodes. And the person who first told me about that was my good friend Tanya Marie. And then I eventually came on this Astrology for the Soul book by Jan Spiller. And she has a chapter for each of the North Nodes, and that's a destiny point in your natal chart. And I started using this material in sessions, and I found that when people would follow the advice for their North Node, that all of a sudden, a lot of times their symptoms would go away. So their health issues would start to resolve the more that they stepped into their soul's destiny. So I started doing a lot more with the North Node, but that was still kind of the only astrology that I really felt confident that I knew how to do. I was doing just kind of cold psychic readings, intuiting things, coaching people, and I would get a sense of, oh, there's going to be a window, you're going to have an opportunity, it's coming in like 3 to 6 months. Or, oh yeah, there's this really powerful energy right now. There's some energy of change. It's in your life. It's going to be there for 3 years. Or I would get these dates, these kind of time frames, and certain energies. And I didn't associate it with astrology at the time. I just thought I was picking up on energies. And in December of 2017, a good friend of my husband's and mine died of a heart attack very unexpectedly. And he was a good friend, but the way that his death hit me was like crazy. Like, my reaction to his death was very disproportionate to what our friendship had seemed to be. And I did past life work and kind of looked at that, but I finally contacted my friend Anne Krailkamp, who has been an astrologer for longer than I've been alive, and I said, I think I need to learn astrology in a deeper way. I had been wanting to learn a new language, and I started studying Welsh, and then thought, astrology would be more practical for my work. And I really didn't expect it to be such a mind explosion. But what happened was she said, oh, sure, I'll mentor you in this. And I started looking at charts. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? That's just so confusing. I can't do this. And then I stuck with it. And Anne was a good teacher. And after a very short period of time, I had this major light bulb moment where I realized, oh, all those energies that I have been sensing are transits or natal chart placements. And these energies have names. And once I realized, oh, okay, the flavor of Uranus, that's that liberation energy that I've been feeling. Or, oops, hold on. Okay, sorry, we'll have to cut that part. Sorry, my screen went blank. Okay, so as I was saying, it was like Helen Keller being taught sign language. Like as an intuitive, I had been kind of operating blind all this time, and I would have to try to explain what was I sensing. And once I kind of had those moments, I realized, oh, that's Pluto energy, that's Chiron energy, that's the North Node, oh, this is Mercury, and oh, that's the square energy, that's that friction I'm sensing, oh, that's an opposition, oh, here's a conjunction. And so it was like somebody gave me the vocabulary for all the things that I had been sensing for my entire life. And so my astrology studies actually went really, really fast after that, because it was just basically having to learn the names and how do I plug what I'm intuitively sensing into the name of astrology. And then what I found was it let my left brain and my right brain just totally work together and take my intuitive readings that much deeper. It also allowed my kind of nerdy English major that hadn't gotten to express herself because of the brain injury, it gave me a way of doing really deep dive research, really doing a lot of analysis, and then taking the little hint from my intuition and then just going really, really deep with the energy of astrology and being able to explain that and label that, and it just let me really fine-tune predictions and interpretations. So for me, astrology was much more like a homecoming. It was like learning a language that allowed me to express things that I had sensed my entire life. And it also brought me just such a tremendous amount of peace in my own life, because whenever you have your own intuitions, there's always the chance that you're, oh, am I kind of, is this just wishful thinking? Is this just me saying that to myself to make myself feel better? But if you can look at it in black and white or in a natal chart, and you've had the feeling, and then there it is, and your rational mind says, oh yeah, that's it. It allows you, or I guess me, to really accept my intuition that much more. It was hugely, hugely validating of what I was sensing, and it just really gave me a lot of clarity from things that were sort of nebulous. It allowed me to really get a much stronger sense of what was going on. And in terms of relationships, it was really helpful to be able to tell, okay, is this friction that I'm feeling with somebody, is this inherent in our relationship, or is this just a little transit and I can kind of ride this out, or we can work on things, we can have a discussion, but it's not the relationship itself. This challenging energy is influencing how we are interacting together. So I would say my astrology practice has really grown since 2018. But and I do feel really fortunate, because my medical, intuitive, and coaching practice just kind of like morphed into being very astrology inclusive. For me, doing astrology is so much easier than doing the intuitive work, just because I've got it right there, and I can use my entire brain rather than having to guess or like grasping for what am I trying to describe here. I can have the metaphor, I can have the intuitive insights, but I can also go back and be able to plug that into a system and make sense of it. So everybody's journey is different. I've certainly read a lot of astrology books. I love the work of Liz Green, as well as Stephen Forrest. Both of those are excellent resources, in addition to the Jan Spiller book and the only astrology book that you'll ever need. So I hope this was helpful and answered some of your questions, and we can get into more nitty-gritty on astrology another day. All right, thanks. Have a great day. Bye.